Hey everyone. So I'm wanting to share a story with you guys without it being a negative dump sesh. It's a hard story for me because it's something that I worked my entire life for, and I would say was taken away from me, but I chose myself. So I am going to tell you my story, and I'm going to start at the beginning because I don't want anybody to ever feel like they fell through the cracks like I have, or feel like they have an injustice that they are unable to speak about because they're scared that it doesn't matter, because it does matter. So I'm here to tell you my story because it matters. My story matters, and so does yours. So I'm just gonna go for it, I guess, and it's probably gonna be messy and imperfect, but I'm okay with that, so just bear with me. Um, I guess first and foremost, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Angelica Swanson, and I am one of four siblings, and I am the only college graduate of my family. I have fought hard to be where I'm at today. Nothing has been given to me. I've worked for everything. I am confident normally in who I am and where I stand, but I understand sometimes your core gets rocked and your ground gets shook. So that's kind of what my story is about, and it's vulnerable and kind of ugly. Um, but it's gotten me to a new place of liberation. So when I was a little girl, I grew up on a farm and I wanted to be a veterinarian. And then as I got older, I realized I have this killer personality and that I had two really awesome employers throughout my life tell me that I had a personality in so many words that didn't deserve to be stuffed behind a desk. And I listened to the first person and took it and ran, and then I listened to the second boss of mine and took it and ran again. And in that take it and run moment, I took a pause in my life and I said, what do I really want to do? And I felt like working just with animals wasn't necessarily what I wanted, but I wanted to work with animals and people. Um, so at the time I was volunteering, actually volunteering at a place called Horses Help, and I learned about hippotherapy, and this is where I fell in love with occupational therapy. So I wanted to be an occupational therapist for the last 10 years plus. Definitely plus, actually. I still feel like I'm like 19 when I'm, definitely 30 plus. So, aging myself right now. Anyways, I don't know. I had this grandiose dream of going to Midwestern and only Midwestern, and that's where my heart was going to be. My mind was like, that was it. So I put all my eggs in one basket and I started applying. My first time I applied, I actually applied late, even though most of the seats had been filled for the program already, uh, because my grandmother passed away and it prolonged my graduation for ASU, and so I could attend her funeral. But that was a decision I chose, and I was content with that decision. I applied to Midwestern the first time knowing that I was just putting my name in the pot, like getting my exposure out there, I guess. So, take two, I applied the next year around, and I scored an interview in this moment. It's June 2021, okay? And I am freshly married as of February 2020. And in that interview moment, I am extremely pregnant. um, like 30 plus weeks pregnant. And so I was actually scheduled for induction June 21st, I think it was. And I had to oh no, I got it. It was like June 23rd, scheduled for induction, and that was the same day that they wanted to set up my interview for Midwestern. So I ended up asking them if they could reschedule my interview, and I interviewed 2 days before my scheduled induction date, which ended up getting bumped also. So anyways, fun story of the Swansons. So back on track, I am pregnant and interviewing, but they don't really know that I'm pregnant at this point because I was like terrified of discrimination or whatever I was terrified of. I don't know. And I knew I was going to find out if I got into the program at the beginning of July. So fast forward a little bit of time, okay? And my husband and I are in the delivery room, and they were having a bunch of difficulties trying to monitor my son. And I'm so sorry, I'm sitting outside and I have horrible allergies. I don't know why I'm out here. Anyways, but I live outside, I'll always be out here, but I just don't know why I'm out here right now because it just rained. Anywho, they were having a hard time monitoring my son, and so there was like a bunch of nurses kind of moving around me at this point, moving my monitors on my stomach, my finger, whatever. My phone's ringing. My husband says, "Your phone's ringing," and I looked down, didn't recognize the phone number. He happens to Google the phone number as I'm being like checked by all the nursing staff. And after the nurses leave the room, he goes, "You need to call that phone number back because it says it's somebody with occupational therapy." So my heart is like fluttering at this point. This is like potentially the call I've been like waiting for my whole life. So I call the phone number back, and it's the director of Midwestern's occupational therapy program offering me a 1 of 40 seats. And my stars were aligning. Like, I'm a newlywed. I've wanted to be a occupational therapist, and I've wanted to be at Midwestern for longer than that. Like, and now this is happening, and then I wanted to be a mom. Like, everything I've ever wanted is like right here in my hands, like happening. Like, I feel so blessed. So then 6 weeks after this, that's July 1st, okay? My bad. Not 6 weeks after that. So that's July 1st that I got this phone call that I'm in labor. July 2nd technically was the day my son was born. And I ended up starting my program 6 weeks later. New mommy. Obviously, that was already a wild ride. And then I was starting a grad program. And well, I don't know if it's like this at every grad program, but when I went into Midwestern's orientation, they pretty much told you, you're no longer drinking out of a water fountain, you are drinking out of a fire hydrant, be prepared. Okay, game changer, right? Like, here I am, I just graduated from ASU with a degree in organizational leadership, and I graduated magna cum laude, so I'm still thinking like, my smarts are there, I'm good to go. No, I was wrong. Totally wrong. Like, it's like drinking out of a freaking fire hose off the fire truck. Like, you can't drink the water fast enough to get it out of your face. Like, that is what grad school at Midwestern was like. They were 1000% correct. And then smack you in the face with being a new mama, and my head was spinning. You know, my husband's head was spinning, but we were navigating, honestly, pretty dang well. My first quarter, which was 10 weeks, it was really hard, don't get me wrong. It was brutal, but we did it, and I passed successfully. Like, not just C's get degrees, but like I passed well. And I struggled with anatomy, but I passed it. And then I went into my second quarter, and I started really strong again. But then we started going through life's turbulence. And as you know, life loves to give you those challenging moments when you're starting to feel like you're settling in. And man, it hit us hard. It, all within 10 weeks. So the 10-week quarter that I was in the time, my side of the family was hit with tornadoes back east. My father-in-law had a widow's maker heart attack. He's 82 years old and survived. He also was battling bladder cancer at the time, and we were dealing with a lot of like testing and concerns and issues with that, with just back-to-back UTIs, and it was quite a medical journey there. And then on top of that, there was just a lot of sickness in our home. That's the era of COVID. And so my husband got COVID, and then a few days into that, my son tested positive for COVID, and then like a few days into that, I tested positive for COVID. So it was just like this fun COVID train, like so many of us experienced. And the policy at Midwestern at the time was if you were exposed within 5 days of somebody within a few days of people, you had to quarantine for 5 days. So I was almost at home for 3 weeks trying to navigate sick husband, sick niece, sick baby, on top of maintaining graduate program. And I'm going to say I rocked the socks off of it because I passed all my classes by the end of that quarter, with the exception of my neuroscience class, which I was struggling with the entire quarter. I was talking to my teacher the entire quarter. Like, I was really trying to do everything I could to use my resources and make sure I didn't fail neuroscience, but just something in my brain was not computing correctly. So I had to have this thing called an ARC meeting, and it's called ARC, Academic Committee Review. And that was to determine whether or not I would still be part of my program for Midwestern due to my fail. And in that moment, my world broke. Like, everything I had fought for, had worked for, my diligence, my hard work, my blood, sweat, and tears, the things I had sacrificed, like, it was all for my schooling. Like, I was trying to be somebody different than the rest of my family. Like, I was just trying to break the mold, you know? And in this ARC meeting, I came so prepared because, you know, it's me, Miss Organized and Plan Ahead. And I outlined everything. I'm so sorry. I outlined everything that I went through like I did with you guys, but I obviously am synopsizing everything for you guys. I outlined everything very thoroughly for that meeting, and I, at the end of the meeting, was recommended to defer for a year. So the class wasn't offered for a whole nother year. They asked me to step away from the program and come back in a year so I could collect myself and give myself the time I needed to figure out how to pass my class. And this is where my emotions get a little wiry. So in that moment, I experienced a lot of commentary from faculty members that were supposed to be advocating for me, regarding just like comments like, oh, well, you know, you just seem so foggy. And that's fine, I understand, that's an observation, that's great. But then they were smacking on the, oh, it must be postpartum this, like, you know, you're postpartum that. And I started getting so, like, sickened by the fact that everybody was going, yes, she just maybe listed out all these stressful, very stressful things that people go through on a daily basis in life, not just a mom or somebody that's postpartum, but anybody. Um, Despite all those factors that I laid out, all I felt like they could see was my postpartum. It was like a mask, and that was not the problem. And nobody heard that. Like, nobody was listening to that. So I stepped away for a year, and I was okay for a month into my deferral, and then I just lost myself. Like I said, I thought that was everything I had worked up to that point in my life. And yes, I was a new mom and I was a new wife, but I felt like I failed me, and I felt like I failed my husband, and I felt like I failed my son, and I felt like I was gonna continue to fail. So I carried that around with me every single day honestly, until I broke. I went from 229 pounds to 136 from March to, well, technically at my last doctor's appointment, that was still it, but that when it became a drastic concern was starting at the end of October. Was my weight loss concern for my family, because that weight loss happened from me having bad mental health. I was hard on myself. I wasn't giving myself grace. I was telling myself I failed and I didn't deserve anything good because I failed, and I was dragging everything I loved down with me. And I don't know where I came up with these things. I don't know what happened, because nobody was telling me that, but I was telling me that. And that's what sucked. Like, my husband is so amazing. Like, you will meet him and get to know him, and he's just like one of these angelic, infectious personalities that is just a ball of energy and positivity and encouragement. But despite all that good, I couldn't see to the good. I could only wallow in the bad. I couldn't let anything pull me out of that. And so I finally broke, and I was having a really hard, real conversation about where I was mentally with my husband. And that conversation entailed me just expressing that I didn't really feel like I had a good place in life. And some of you can probably hear that for what I'm trying to really say. I was really having a hard time finding a place on this earth. But I have been raised to believe in a higher power, and I also don't believe that you choose to take yourself off this earth. So for me and my beliefs, I was really battling with wanting a place on earth, but trying to find it. And my husband was trying to pull me through that, and then I started realizing that I had a lot of support, but it took me really listening and really stepping back and trying to pull myself out of the fog. And this whole time I was going to counseling, this whole year deferral, I was seeing a counselor and working on me. And then I ended up getting on some medication, and that medication was started at the end of December. And I actually at the beginning of December. And I had started back. I went back to school, back to Midwestern, November 29th, to start my Midwestern quarter again, or for neuroscience. And the first 2 exams, I failed, and I was devastated. All my fears that I had pent up and everything negative I had told myself for the last year was coming true. and I was failing all over again. But that didn't mean I was failing a class. That meant I was failing me. I was failing my husband. That meant I was failing my life. So I again, I'm sorry. I told my husband in confidence how that made me feel about needing help, because I knew where my mental state of mind was. I shouldn't be thinking about not being here. I should be thinking about, how do I fix this? Where am I going in my future? What does my future look like? But I was just compounding all these like horrible negative thoughts. Um, I don't know. It's just hard to even conceptualize how somebody's brain gets them into that spot, because I don't know even when I started doing that, and that's what breaks my heart. But anyways, I started really working with my doctor and my counselor and my husband and my best friend. And then I started talking to more of my closer knit friends and telling them where I was. And that was a big step for me, because they had no idea. Because I'm this person that can smile and light up a room when I'm utterly like crippled inside. And I know so many of us carry that around with them on a daily basis, and none of us talk about it. And some of us navigate it better than other people. But the greatest gift that you have is being you, you know? And the greatest test that you'll ever have in your life is how you handle other people treating you. But again, that starts with you, how you treat you, you know? So when I went to my doctor, I told her, I failed my first 2 tests. I'm not in a good mental state. I need some extra help with my medicine, with just everything. And it was like a collaboration. It was awesome. Like, I felt like I was starting to kind of breathe differently with my medicine. And then I felt like my husband was hearing me differently, and my counselor was like, what he was giving me for coping mechanisms and stuff, I was moving in the right directions. Everything was starting to feel really good. And then as I used my tutor and the resources at Midwestern, I felt like I was doing everything I possibly could. So, that's, what can you say more than that? That's all you can really ask for. Then come test 3, I passed. Test 4, I passed even better. But I failed the class again by roughly 1.5 questions. And this is a class that is only exams. There's no homework, really. There's like 2 points per unit, so 8 points extra for the whole quarter. And each exam is only 24 questions. So the points are immense, like pressure if you get them wrong. So I get an email from my teacher, letting me know that he was sad to inform me I failed the class again. And then in that email, he informed me that there was some other information that had been previously conveyed to me, that I was going to have the opportunity for a remediation exam, but that the remediation exam was actually not applicable for me, because it was a retake for me. But I was misinformed of that, and why should it be any different from me when I just put in all the same work and effort and money and everything as any of the other students that just took the exam and passed too? Like, I don't get it. So I was having a really hard time digesting that information, and it really took the wind out of my sails, because I felt like they were like, oh, hey, you failed. And by the way, what we told you was wrong. Bye, you know? Um, so they set up the opportunity for another ARC meeting. It was scheduled, and I ended up going um, to the meeting, and I had a lot of time. In between that meeting, there was a lot of communications back and forth between that meeting and the actual day that I got that notification of my course status. And in the meeting, I could hear them talking before they called me in, and I could hear them talk about my good standing coming into the program and how I I was in short, I was a promising applicant. You know, I was a good applicant with a good GPA and a good academic history. But I just kind of had a bad run for my money with this neuroscience course, which cost me $11,000 to take, by the way, the second time. um, anyways, I hear them in so many words, like say they're gonna give me another chance to prove that how bad I want to be an occupational therapist, and that they were pretty much giving me a favor. They were gonna pull me through the program and see how bad I wanted to be an OT. It was like a 3-segmented comment, and it was like the way I heard them word it. It was just kind of like the nail in the box for me, because I had already been thinking that I didn't feel like I belonged at Midwestern. Like, even if they offered me another decision, I didn't know, or opportunity, I didn't know if I wanted to make the decision to be there. Like, what I haven't told you while telling my story, because it was already so complicated, was that I've experienced a lot of unprofessional behavior, and I'm paying for a private institute to teach me how to be a medical professional. Some of the treatment and some of the things that have been expressed to me via emails and phone calls, like from directors and deans, like just things that are condescending and not kind and unprofessional. And, you know, I am advocating for myself because I don't have to choose that. I realized that in my time that I took before my second NRC meeting. I realized that all that negative I was carrying around with me for a whole year was taking away all the blessings that I had in my family, and my husband, and my son, and my family, friends, everything. Because I felt like my first ARC meeting, when I went in there and said, this is everything that has happened to put me in this situation, I did exactly what they asked me to do by doing that. Plead your case, they said. But then I walked out of there and I felt like they told me that it was unacceptable to be a human being, but it was acceptable to only fit the mold of being a student. I beat myself up for a whole year because that's what I felt like I was told. And that is not okay. Those were supposed to be people that were supportive to me and understanding. People that the day after my ARC meeting, I went and spoke with a former director there now. She was the current director at the time, but formerly the director now. And she sat in front of me and she told me how important it was for me to take the time to be with my son, because it was the most critical year of his life for growth and all this stuff. And My stomach was churning because she was not a mom herself. She has no idea what it's like. So why is she educating me on something she's not educated about? It's these things that I carried with me that didn't sit well with me because I'm paying for an education at a private professional medical school. But I'm seeing a lot of flaws and I'm seeing a lot of unprofessional behavior and unprofessional commentary and emails and unprofessional comments as I was trying to get back into the program from different departments like the financial aid and student services. I had to go rounds and rounds and rounds because at the end of the day, I kept being told, well, we're under a lot of stress and there's a lot of movement in different departments and things aren't getting done. So I was following up, which I'm fine with. I can follow up and do my due diligence to make sure my future is in my control and how I wish it to be. But what I don't wish is for me to have to do somebody else's job and for them to say that it's getting done and then me have to pay to come back to pay to receive a professional education. Where's the professionalism in that madness? So I walked into my second ARC meeting knowing that I was walking away from Midwestern by the end of that meeting, no matter what they offered me, because I choose me. Nobody treats me like that. Nobody should treat you like that. And that's why I'm telling you guys this. If you guys are listening right now to me, nobody on this earth should ever make you feel any less than the amazing person that you are. And that starts with you. So everything that you potentially think about and fight for and that motivates you and that gets you out of bed every day, those things have substance in your life and you fight for them. You fight for them in ways that you never fight for anything else. And let me tell you, I never thought I would fight for myself this way. At the beginning of this video, I told you guys I put all my eggs in one basket. And that basket had a big MWU written all over it. Midwestern University. And now I'm sitting right here in front of you guys telling you that I took that MWU off my basket. I removed it. And I voluntarily removed it because I don't choose them. I don't have to choose that treatment. I do not choose that treatment. I choose me. I choose to be the professional. I choose to advocate for people who fall through the cracks. I choose to use my voice to advocate for those who may not feel like they have a voice, but they do, or may not be brave enough in this moment to use their voice, even though they have that calling inside to do so. I am here to be the person that says it is not right, because it was not right to happen to me. And people don't speak about this kind of stuff enough. Why? Because it's an institution. And institutions usually win against one singular person. But at the end of the day, if we all have a voice and we all use it, we all become stronger. You empower me, and I empower you. And that is the way of the land. That's what it should be. That will hopefully lead us to a kind world if we are able to have the compassion and understanding to truly listen to each other. Not just say words because it's per policy, but truly have compassion of humanity. I really appreciate all your time. I've yapped at you for so long. So I'll be back for more. I appreciate the love. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the act of listening. Until next time.